was life like prior to you getting help? What was your business? What type of business do you have? How long were you in business? Briefly, what was life like for you?
So, life for me before coaching, I started my practice in 2015. And by 2022, I had a 6 location practice. And we were about at that point close to 80 staff members. It was pretty hectic, I would say. I would say my days were mostly filled with a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails, a lot of, to put it lightly, problem solving, but it just felt like everything was a fire. A lot of just creating policy in real time to try to help manage certain things. But we were probably seeing around over 1,000 visits a week, so about over 4,000 visits a month. And I would say that it was really, really, while it sounds very thriving, it was very stressful. I worked extremely long days. I probably started as early as 6 or 6:30 in the morning, and I went as late as 7 to 8 at night. And there was a lot of sleepless nights because I would stay awake wondering if we were going to make payroll. And there were some weeks that we didn't, and we borrowed and scraped and from every nook, cranny, corner, and eventually even from those that give loan in order to keep this business running, because we just kept having this feast or famine that got extremely difficult to navigate, especially at our size.
So you have this 1,000 visit a week company, 6 locations, 80 plus employees, and you're having serious financial difficulties. How did that come to be? Why wasn't it like what everyone thought it was? Oh my God, you must be making a ton of money, you're successful, and all this other stuff. How did it get to that place?
I would say the good things that got us to that place was, I think I got really lucky with parts of my team early on, and I'm not afraid of hard work. I don't think any entrepreneur is. But the bad things, I think, or the things that really exacerbated issues, were we didn't really have systems. Every solution, I think, ended in me. We used a lot of debt. By the time I started coaching, I was more than half a million in debt with crazy loans. I was probably spending in a given month, by the time I started, I was around 22 to 25,000 a month in debt payment. And we also always tried to outgrow any cash shortages. So we didn't necessarily have issues like recruiting, but I don't know that we always recruited the right people. So we would always just try to outgrow our cash crunches by just bringing on more patients, but that would exacerbate other issues because we didn't have systems or anything to really manage that kind of influx. So,
So wait a minute. So you weren't profitable, you weren't really making any money, and the thought was at the time, if we can just get a little busier, then we can get over the hump and then we'll be doing fine. So
yes,
then you hired more people, which increased your expenses, and you didn't never really had a problem with patients, but net, it didn't really solve the problem. It just
no.
exacerbated because now you have more people, more fires, more problems, and whatever systems you have in place weren't able to handle the amount of business that was flowing through your locations.
And I know it would seem like we had systems because I mean, we had gone through several payer audits and we passed those with flying colors. It would seem like we had systems because we had departments that did different functions. But looking back now, I recognize that what worked when we were 1 million, 2 million just didn't really work when we were 3.7, 3.9 at that time, because it was very much, as we were bringing on providers, you could see the stress on other sides. So we would have to bring on more personnel there, but that created more need for management without ever sitting down and evaluating, okay, what needs to happen in the system. So we were
Yeah.
creating more issues as we were going, but it was hard to see that
Yes, it's
all the
always
stuff.
hard to see when you're stuck in the middle of it, in the middle of the forest. It's hard to see it.
Yeah.
There's a great saying that says, "What got you here won't get you there." And it sounds like what got you to this place started to shake. The lug nuts started coming off on the wheels as you can continue to grow, and you were funding that through debt. carrying a much debt. How is this affecting you personally, your well-being? How is it affecting your relationships, perhaps with your staff, with Beto, your spouse, with everyone in your life?
With my staff, I will say they could sense my stress. I think that we all lived in a constant state of stress. In a private practice, in my private practice at least, because I was on the ground floor with them, they were very much feeling every bit of emotion. If we weren't about to make payroll, there's no way that I can hear that, oh, Julie, this thing broke and we need another one. Or
Right.
like, I'm not in a place to hear.
I want to raise, or,
Mhm.
can we buy this expensive machine or this expensive thing or something like that, right?
Any of that. My directors, who that's my leadership team that was closest to me and I saw every day and talked with every day, I think there would be sometimes we would go into leadership meetings, and I actually don't know if you know this, but sometimes they would like one or two of them would begin to cry because they could feel the stress of the situation because it was hard. It was really hard.
And people can sense your energy, regardless of what you say, your words. Stress brings energy. It's just
Yeah,
not positive,
exactly.
but it brings energy. So it exacerbates all the emotion, all that. You got people crying, you got people, I mean, it's so
Mhm.
much. How did that affect you personally, physically, mentally, emotionally?
So physically, mentally, emotionally, I would say I was a nervous wreck. I've always been, I would say all through college, I've always just been very, I'm not afraid to work. I've always just been able to put in those hours and do that. This was different. I started experiencing what I later found out was like the a panic attacks where I would get certain news and my heart would start racing. I'd start to feel like I was getting tunnel vision. I would have these really terrible headaches. I would feel like I couldn't breathe. I gained a ton of weight. And that was something that was really that also affected my heart rate. I had not my heart rate, but my health. I had that was something that my doctor within like the span of a year, because my doctor's known me since I was 17 years old, and she was like, oh my gosh, you went from like normal blood pressure to I was stage 2, almost moving into like you are going to have an episode. She's like, what is happening? So I all these things health wise. Personally, I mean, I have a daughter and she just never really saw me. It started becoming like mommy's just not home. And my husband, you don't get to turn it off. You don't get to go home and just because I finished working at 7 at night, you go home and you don't think about it. You can't sleep. I would wake up and I would wake up in like pure, almost like terror. But it's
Oh.
nothing you can really do about it. It affects everything. It leaks into everything.
What was the final straw where yours are like, I need to get help. I need to find a coach, someone to help me through this.
I think whenever you get as at least as big as I got, you think that if you could just have a little bit more time, you're going to figure it out. Or you just need to try one more thing. And I think it was realizing I couldn't borrow anymore. I wasn't sleeping well. I wasn't showing up well. I had a very loyal team. I'm watching all the webinar. I'm reading all these books and it's not getting better. And I actually had read something of yours where you had talked about your practice and what had happened when it burned down. And I remember thinking to myself, because this was literally that moment, I said, if all 6 locations could just burn down, I'd be okay. And that was a really hard realization that I just wanted it all to end. So I realized I didn't have all the answers. I realized that I didn't really know what to do next, but I also was out of time.
Did,
And
did you did you pride yourself on you're smart, you're intelligent, you're a
Mhm.
hard worker?
Oh,
Did
thanks.
that affect your ability to maybe not look for help sooner?
Yes, because I'd always been able to like, and I'm just going to say this, like, you go to a webinar and I was always able to glean something off of it, use it, implement it in my practice, see it go well. And I'm like, okay, I don't need this other person to help me figure that out. I don't need someone to help me come up with this step by step of how to do this policy or how to make your therapist work hard or like I didn't need that. And so I will say that it felt like I didn't need help because I'd always been able to figure it out. This was different. This was different. Yeah.
Yeah. So, full disclosure, you and I have been working for a few years now. How did you end up choosing me as your coach? Practice Freedom U. What was your criteria?
I had actually interviewed several coaches before this point. So it wasn't like in 2022, in full disclosure, that I'm in crisis mode and trying to find a coach frantically. I probably wouldn't have been in a headspace to do interviews and take the time to do that then. I had did this before, and I had realized that so one of my criteria was I didn't want a coach who had not been in the chair before. I realized that that was really difficult, having someone who didn't know this perspective of CEO. I also needed somebody who could line up with my value. And so I definitely have like interviewed coaching programs that I could tell that like they were going to ask me to do things or implement things that didn't line up with my value or what our mission is. And so that was really important that a coach be able to understand, like, I'm not going to do something
Customized and adaptable, not this is how we help you do it. And it's like, well, if that doesn't align with what I want, I'm not going to do it. And if that then allows you to say, well, then,
it doesn't work,
you
then
can't get the
what is.
results. And it's like, I'm not going to go through 6 months, a year, 2 years of that for you to tell me, oh, it didn't work because you didn't do every little thing we said.
And in so many ways, I feel like, as a therapist by training, I don't think therapy is textbook or cookie cutter. And so I
Right.
didn't want that approach taken with me. I also needed someone who would be aware of my blind spots to also have those hard conversations with me. I didn't want somebody to just like tell me like you're doing great when I'm not. Like somebody who's going to call you on it, because that does matter. I don't think that you should. I was in a place to be open and hear this, and I needed someone who was willing to give that feedback. And yeah, I mean it's very interesting because I think that a lot of people come in with like, this is my step, and I also didn't want somebody who was going to intervene in my practice for me. That actually was a criteria for me because I'd interviewed 2 people that had offered to do that, and that bothers me. I don't want an outside person in my practice because I don't know. I wanted this to be my practice. This needed to be something I understood and could implement. And so
Yeah, that's
that.
interesting because I know a lot of consultants, I wouldn't necessarily use the same thing as coach.
Mhm.
Consultants want to come into a practice, and a lot of people like that, but you have the same perspective that I do is I don't want to come in and then be the person. I want to be the guide and have you stay in that role of the owner, of the CEO, of the leader, and me coming in there diminishes that. And it sounds
Mhm.
like you were looking for that.
Yes, yes. So other than that, which I sounds like 4 criteria, I didn't really. I came in with like an open mind hearing people, but it's kind of almost like that that's not what you're looking for. And so it was good for me to have those conversations because I had whittled it down by that point, and I had stayed on your newsletter because I had liked our call. But at that point I was like, I have this figured out. I'm working on these things, and I kind of just moved on. But it's interesting because I always wonder if I had started coaching then when I wasn't in a crisis, when I wasn't in debt, what it could have been, what the practice could have been. But definitely starting at this point, reaching out then, hearing the story then, and being at that breaking point was pivotal.
Yeah. Yeah. Most of us don't go to the doctor when we're feeling well.
No.
We don't do the annual checkup. I know I've been guilty on that. The annual checkup on everything. We go when we're in pain.
Mhm.
So it's certainly hard. So again, you and I, we do private coaching. We meet every other week. We have met more than that on many occasions. You have done so many amazing things in your business, so many transformations. You've gotten ahas, so much stuff and success. What has been some of your just biggest things that has helped transform you that you have seen just within yourself and how you show up and everything else? What are some of the things over the years you can recall?
Over the years, there's a lot. I think the biggest transformations, I will say that the first transformation was learning how to create space so that I could show up better. And I'm trying to think of how to say that without getting into the nitty gritty and the weeds. But that
Well,
was
I mean,
something.
what would be an example of that? I think people would like to hear, like, what's one example of how you created space so you showed up better?
So I would just be in my office for 10, 12 straight hours, just working, answering calls, answering emails, trying to figure out problems and things like that,
No
creating
breaks, no
the
nothing,
rights.
just
Mhm.
constant. If I just work hard enough, I can get over this.
Exactly.
Hmm.
So learning to create space, like even just taking a walk in the middle of the afternoon and like forcing myself to step away, it started creating these pockets of air. When you're drowning, these pockets of air are essential. Um, that
I remember I'd get upset at you. If you remember this, I get upset at you when you called me and I said, "Why aren't you outside right now?" And you were in
Mhm.
your office, and then you would call me later, and you're like, "Look, I'm outside," and your whole energy would be different.
Yeah.
All of your thoughts and ideas, like you would just show up so much differently when you had those pockets of air.
Yes. And my team started to notice these little changes too that led to big changes. I think getting a meeting rhythm, so that was important so that they're actually productive and not just these like 3 hour working sessions where it just never ends.
And you did have plenty of 3 hour quote meeting slash working sessions
Mhm.
that never ended. They
Yes.
just kept going and going. So
Mhm.
when you understood what a meeting is for, what was that aha like? What did it do for you knowing that you had, was it a consistent meeting? Was it a structure to the meeting? What was it about? You called them meeting rhythms, which you know I love that term. What was it about that that really was like the aha for you?
It creates even more time. And it also makes your team problem solvers in the sense that because there's an expectation in the meeting, like they know what to expect, you know what to expect, it makes it just way more productive. And the aha for me is finishing a meeting within 30 minutes or 40 minutes, and they know what to do. I know what's going to happen. We know when we're going to talk to again. That decreases the number of in between phone calls and emails as well because they know what they can hold because they know they're going to see me again when that'll be and what to expect. And I will say that it also created time for me to be able to show up properly for that meeting and be in a good headspace to receive things and be like more productive and help them in that meeting because very much at the beginning it was a lot of like getting a sense of where everyone is and what that needed to look like. But yeah, no, it was definitely the structure and it was also just creating more time for me. So as we but that I don't know if that was the intention always, but that was a byproduct of it. It created a lot more.
Yeah, for sure. I know one of the things that you and I have spoke about many a time, and just recently, is one of the big transformations is you've gotten better being present with your staff,
Mm-hmm.
being curious,
Mm-hmm.
able to ask, good questions. Can you speak a little bit more about that and what it's done for you?
That is such a game changer because I remember that was actually really hard for me. And I don't know if you remember this part, Jamie, but you were like, I know you know the answer, Julie, but I need you to ask them. like, and and it's this piece of it allows them to take ownership. And also, when you're curious, you also find out things that you actually don't know it. And eventually, you don't need to know it because you have things in place that allow you to have the information you need at a moment's notice. You're able to verify what's happening, but it also I just say I love this part of it because it's so exciting engaging in conversations during meetings now because I'm able to be truly curious, ask questions, and get their perspective, which is different than yours. They're not mini yous, even though in some ways they do emulate you. Your team is not just you, and get new ideas and also build into them because it's a dynamic process for them too when you're asking questions and you're truly asking a question that they don't like you don't know the answer to.
You don't know what the answer is because
Mhm.
most of us, the ask questions, we already know the answer. We're almost like testing to see if they know the answer. And they
Yes.
know that, which then creates this,
Tension.
tension, this unspoken tension, and then both sides get frustrated, and it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's not a great way. Everything you said is impactful and it's important, and at the same time, you have learned and have embraced the financials aspects of this business and
Yes.
embracing money.
Yes.
And you have told me before you've had some money blocks, as we call them, money issues,
Hmm.
because of the work that you've done, that I have fortunate enough to be a part of this with you. What have been some of the core results from a couple of years ago until now? Where are your revenues now? If you mind, where is your profit or your profit margin? What's going on with the debt? What is your life like that? What's your relationship with your daughter and Beto, your spouse? Like what's happening?
So as a result of all the work that we've gotten to do together, which has been incredible. So revenue right now in the business is we should be close to 6 million this year. So somewhere around 5.8, 5.9. We're on target for that. We have a good core staff. Our profit margin is around in a lower month around 10%, but we are able to get all the way up to 16% now. This is something that because of my money blocks, this is actually being aware of them is half the battle there, but it's been very interesting learning what those are and being able to actually do things now. So before I maybe wouldn't take vacations or take time away because it felt selfish. It felt like if my team needs me and I'm not available, like I've stranded them without me. And what's been nice is I've been able to step away. I was able to visit my grandmother in England for 2 weeks and really just like be offline. That was amazing. This summer, I'm actually taking my daughter to Italy for her music program, and we're going to be there for 2 weeks. And my team's got it. It's amazing, and I don't have to worry about that aspect. We're actually more so worrying about like what are we going to wear and things like that, which I don't think I wouldn't say that 3 years ago that would have been the way I wouldn't have even considered.
You brought up the debt earlier. How's the
Mhm.
debt working out?
The debt is being paid down. It doesn't suffocate me anymore. We are no longer making those enormous payments. We restructured some of it. Well, we restructured all of it, and we've been able to make really a lot of headway on it. And so I would say we're now down to, I mean, do you want me to mention all of that?
No, I mean, just whatever you feel comfortable. But I know you had not just $500,000 in debt, you were paying in upwards of $42,000 a month that I
Mhm.
remember that you
Mhm.
told me. And with the work that you've done, that we've figured we've reconsolidated and structured the debt, we've paid off the high interest loans, we made it just a manageable line item.
Yeah, my
And
payment's only 9,000 a month. It's completely doable with our revenue and our profit. So it's not even something I think about. It's a bill. It's
yeah.
less than some of our rent payments. Like it's not a thing to me.
Yeah,
So
it's a huge
that's
weight off
been
your shoulder.
yes.
So you talked about your revenue and your profits, all of that's gone up. Your personal time with your family, your time with yourself. You told me, and obviously I saw that stress weight you put on you
Oh, it's come
now. I
off.
mean, you've always looked amazing, and now you were like, no, this is who I am. Whereas before, that
Mhm.
wasn't who you were. I didn't know the difference. I just
Yeah.
saw the stressed out Julie. How do you feel just taking care of you and your mindset and all of that? How would you describe that?
I no longer see taking care of me as like selfish or I'm not working hard enough or I'm asking people to work for me. I see it now as like essential to my mental well being. One of the things that I've learned through coaching is that you are the ceiling, and not just in terms of like position as the CEO, but like no one can rise above you. And if you're not in a mental health space that is clear and open, like you can't model something and you're asking your team to model something that you yourself aren't showing. And I actually make it a point to ensure that I have a specific amount of space and time in my schedule, and that is does wonders. It's funny because my husband also loves that I put that time and space. My daughter sees me as present. She knows that there are parts where that's what I do now versus mommy works a lot. It's now there's things that I do at home. It's nice being able to be there for those moments that I feel like before, you start the business thinking you'll be able to do a few things and have some flexibility and then it disappears, but now it's built in versus being an afterthought.
Yeah, it no longer consumes you. I mean, you forever have changed your daughter's life because she's growing up with a mom that's fully present and engaged. That wasn't happening. I mean, you even told me not to go too personal, but you've shared so much that even your relationship with your spouse, the amount of pressure that was on you and on him and all of that, who knows where that relationship would have gone if things kept going down that track. So many wonderful things, and we get to continue this journey because it is a
Yes.
journey, and you have such big and wonderful goals to continue to move towards. There's so many people out there, Julie, so many people that I call kind of quietly suffering, perhaps having their own version of the fire or the
Mhm.
panic attacks. Maybe those physical changes and things like that that you and I have gone through, but they're still on the fence. They're still just not sure. What advice, based on your experience, would you give them if they asked you, why should we work with Jamey? Why should we work with Jamey's team? What advice would you give them?
Well, of course, the first thing I would say is do it. But in terms of why and the advice around why do it, it's A, truly, you don't know what you don't know. And I think it's very easy to get into a routine and not realize that you've stagnated. And I say that for people who perhaps are going down the middle. For those who are quietly suffering, you don't have to do this alone. And I feel like that is the isolating part of the work that we do. Our practice is the vehicle through which we drive change and we better the lives of our community and our lives and the lives of our staff. And we are not trained to do this part. You don't have to have all the answers alone. It's good to have a guide, invaluable. And for me, when I was at a point where I don't think I had another wrong move left in me, I didn't have another guess left in me. It was invaluable having somebody whose only interest is your success, like whose only dog in this fight is you. And so much of what you do, it isn't always just the business. It's sometimes you. And if your team, Practice Freedom U, that is known. That is known that it's the business, it's you, and all of that works together. And they're not trying to like tackle and isolate this one thing. We're looking at this so holistically and it will change your life. And I mean, yes, it'll change your business. Absolutely, that's going to happen, but it'll change your life. And you can't not whenever you know that it's going to make everything just so much better, like every aspect. So it's honestly something that I don't know why more people don't do coaching, but I think it's because they just don't know that it can be
Well,
better.
I think a couple reasons why people don't look for help is one of them, it's a little bit of a pride issue, an ego that I should know I'm smart. I think an other is how they look at money and investment money versus cost money. What would you say to someone that was worried or concerned about, the quote cost of this level of coaching? What would you say?
When you say you can't afford it or you don't think it should be this much or anything like that, I feel like I was 42,000 a month right at the peak of my debt. And whenever I first looked at coaching, I wasn't paying any of that. And then I look at my profit now, and the reality is it's a fraction of what you could be doing to have that guidance. And it's invaluable in the sense that you're limiting yourself and you're limiting your profits. You're limiting what you could be doing because you'll make that back and more because you will multiply your impact. You will multiply your bottom line, especially when you're not making the same mistakes or same mistake, different face, and you don't even realize it over and over again. Because I mean, I would say that I felt like I was at the top of my game in terms of even before the debt. I felt like I was at the top of my game, but there are things where you can always improve. And I think that is what a coach is for. They're there to take you to the next level. And you need a guide. It
Yeah.
is what it is.
And it's not for the weak minded. It's not for the You got to have some courage and some guts, don't you?
Yes, you do. Yes, you
Yeah.
do. You're going to hear some things and do some things that you're like, okay, okay, I can do this. I can do this. But I don't think you've ever told me to do something that was just out of my reach. And if I needed help understanding, if I needed that extra phone call, if I just needed to run something, I mean, it is so nice because it's very different than being like in a Facebook group, or I have private practice friends. It's not like I'm in a bubble. But once again, they're your peer group. They're not, like I said, this is somebody who is invested. The only thing that they're invested in is in your success. That's it. That's literally it.
Excellent. Julie, thank you so much. That
Thank you,
was
Jamie.
that was awesome. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful.